Okay, Chief Reed, it looks like recording has started. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good day again, everyone. Calling the ICC Fire Service Membership Council March 16th meeting to order. Carl, can you please do a roll call?
Sure thing. Chief Reed, I have you. Tim Diehl, I've got you. Brian Adams as well. Rick Boisford, I believe, is going to be out today. I believe he's got an investigation that's ongoing. Is that right, Chief O'Brien?
Yes, he does.
Okay, gotcha. That's what I remember. Okay, Chief Collins. Chief Collins. Marshal Desrochers is going to be out today. He's got some conflicting meetings, so he won't be able to make it. Chief Hyde, are you here?
Present.
Gotcha, Chief. Thank you. Ed Kaminsky, I've got you. Thanks. Andy King, I see you as well. Let me mark you here. Jonathan Lund has got a conflict today, so he won't be able to join us. Marshall Medina, I see you. Marshall Nelson, I see you. Kelly Nicolello, I see you as well. Tina, are you here from Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs? Okay. Sean Toomey, I don't know, he might be a few minutes late. Sean, have you joined? I know he'll be coming in for sure. Chief Wassom, I've got you, and Director Metz, I see you as well. So I'm not sure if that gives us a full, let me do some counting here real quick. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8. I see 9, so we're right on the edge. I think with Sean, we'll be at a quorum when he joins.
Okay, so we'll see when we get to the item number 3 whether or not we have a quorum or not. So, thank you very much.
Yes.
Great. Next item is the guest presentation, and I'd like to send it back to Carl for introductions.
Sure. Thanks, Christine. I just wanted to take a quick second and give a personal thanks to Chief O'Brien for joining us today. So Chief Mike O'Brien is with the Brighton Area Fire Authority in Michigan. Chief O'Brien is also International Director for the International Association of Fire Chiefs. So he has spent a lot of time not only working with the ICC codes, but he also serves on a number of other committees outside of our process and has been monitoring this issue of lithium-ion batteries and energy storage systems. So Chief O'Brien did a presentation the other day for the Congressional Fire Services Institute. And I thought that when we kind of met up during that CFSI meeting the other day, I thought that it would be really appropriate if he would be able to maybe share that same messaging with us in the short amount of time that we've got him today. And I wanted to thank him for coming on board to do this on what is very short notice. So Chief O'Brien, the floor is yours, and thanks so much for joining us.
All right, first question, Carl, can you see my screen? Do you see a PowerPoint?
Yep, got your PowerPoint up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and no problem. Thanks, Madam Chair, for having me, and I will move through this relatively quickly and happy to answer any questions. You know, but if you didn't know, the United States and much of Canada, well, heck, the whole world is in some form of battery revolution right now. What used to take place in about 3-4 major manufacturing facilities is now slated for every XUC here. And since this has been added, we could add one just to the right of the thumb of Michigan up in Ottawa, Canada. VW has announced about $3 billion battery plant in that location, as well as we could add about 5 more check boxes of where battery making facilities are going to be in the United States. You know, right now, the United States is probably getting somewhere about 90% of our batteries coming in from China and other manufacturers in by ship. You know, they're hauled across our roads to get into some final product, but never have we seen this. Sorry, I'm getting my own voice. It's always weird.
Sorry, Mike, I'll make sure the rest are muted. Keep going.
Yeah, no worries. So besides this, there are thousands of buildings across the United States that are going to start to house batteries in some way, shape, or form. And what I want you to think about, there are companies who right now work for the big 3 or work for any of the automotive, in which they will test some port of automotive. right? Their job may be a seal, it may be vibrations. And so those companies are also starting to transition. And so we're seeing this massive change in the built environment. In the bottom right, that's a Home Depot in South Carolina, where last year at Memorial Day, you couldn't find anything within that facility that wasn't battery powered. In the upper right, we've seen this picture far too often. But one of the things that's starting to change is in our more remote areas where we have maybe a stressed power grid, you're seeing the addition of batteries for rapid charging and level 3 charging equipment. And this scenario on the left played out here in Brighton. This is a facility that installed photovoltaic as well as Tesla Powerwalls. In those gray boxes or Tesla Powerwalls below a 30% state of charge. Always remember that number when we're talking storage, but below a 30%. But in this case, it was most likely a piece of portable equipment in charging that caught on fire, and these devices added to our fire environment. So the question, since I'm talking to a bunch of fire code officials, what do our fire and building codes say for us in the built environment as we start to get into this pallet storage, large pile storage, or many different configurations? If you need any resources, this is some stuff that we've thrown together. You can capture that. It'll take you to the Google Drive, because one of the things here, there's so much information coming out every day. And really, to paint this picture, every day in the United States and abroad, there's probably 2 to 3 fires happening, from mobility devices all the way to large scale battery issues. And so when we start to think through what is going to affect our fire service, it's everything on this diagram. We're going to have a large increase of raw materials moving by train, boat, as well as by transport as we go to make batteries, right? So think back to your chemistry days, you make anode and cathodes, you got to get all those materials to make batteries. And then we need to get the secret sauce to put it in there and make it a battery. Just because we have an anode or cathode, it doesn't become a battery. So the plants have to test them and get them into some kind of form in some kind of state of charge. And one of the things, if I were to probably put parentheses, is the great race for the safer next chemistry, something that can go farther, longer. Google ONE, Our Next Energy. They're the ones that say, hey, look, we can make a Tesla go 600 miles. Well, if I can make a Tesla go 600 miles with different chemistries and I can get it on the market, that's a game changer. But we're also seeing other materials, non-lithium ion. So what's the effect in our codes and standards and how we put them together? But all of these take place in buildings, right? We're putting together batteries, we're making module packs. It may not be the battery facility, it may be a facility storing, waiting for just-in-time delivery to get to our automotive sector. But regardless, whether it's mobility, fixed devices, energy storage, cars, we're using these batteries more so than ever. So we're going to have accidents. We're going to have things that get dropped. We're going to have car accidents. We're going to have incidents that maybe Mother Nature affects. And so we're always going to have that fire department response. But then if that isn't the case and we just hit end of life, we've now got this collection. If you go back to that picture in the United States of all those check boxes, we could probably add about another 10 check boxes across the United States, whether it's battery recycling or places that are collecting storage. But every single one of us are dealing with battery collection in some way, shape, or form. And it's in our big box retail. They're taking lithium-ion batteries. And so the question is, what do our codes and standards start to do to help us in this? But really, one of the most exciting things when you start to look at companies like Li-Cycle as well as Redwood Materials, they're recycling lithium-ion, getting raw materials and putting it back in the grid. So most of us have dealt with these issues, but this is the 5 major issues that our battery responses are falling in. There's no doubt that in New York City, with the nearly 200 plus events a year that are happening there, but those are happening in some form of scale across the United States where we have mobility devices. And many of us are charged with, okay, how do we change this messaging? And how do we get out there to start educating our general public? Because we're starting to see massive, devastating fires, not only in human loss, but in building loss. There's no doubt electrical and hybrid vehicle crashes, but buses, one of the things confronting most of us is, hey, how many EVs can I put in a parking deck? Are parking decks made to house these vehicles? What do I need to do for all the energy coming in? What about what's the best storage practice for my community as it relates to EV and alternative energy buses and bus systems? But really, we can start to see this. And I would say one of the bigger issues is this recycling bullet, as well as the storage and manufacture. ESS really has some really solid work that's been done, but it's a change in paradigm for most of us in the fire service because they're being engineered to burn. They're being engineered to burn out. And that's part of the process, both within the IAFC as well as in NFPA 855 as they go through UL 9540A testing to get rid of some of the hazards associated. One of their ways to fix this is to just let it burn out. That's a culture change for the fire service. But where this recycling issue starts to come in is when we're not recycling the right way and batteries are making it into our trash system, getting crushed or compacted. And we know that not all batteries create fires. We use them all the time in the fire service. We're probably going to have to start doing some of the same work for our staff in proper charging, proper use, and being more cognizant when we drop a tool to alert somebody that we had a problem. But there's also this economy of scale and things that are happening in our world. This is a home in which this person works on eBay. They take the batteries in and they will modify them. This battery was in UPS about 10 minutes before this event happened, and you can see it totally consume the room. Now, those pops are all those different cells going into some form of thermal runaway. And thermal runaway, just as a reminder, can happen from mechanical abuse, electrical abuse, thermal abuse. So we can overheat it, we can crush them, we can overcurrent, undercharge them, but we get into this thermal runaway. And one of the issues here is initial thermal runaway can present very lazy to our firefighters. It looks like lazy smoke, but it's highly toxic gas. In all the ESS large scale testing we're doing, we're seeing huge amounts of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and some form of hydrogen coming out. But we get this thing called thermal runaway. So if you think back to that show on Discovery Channel where they would go out in the Bering Sea and catch crabs, it was always bad when one crab started to die in the tank, right? Others would start to die. Well, the same holds true when we take all these cells, right? The newest Tesla model will have somewhere around 4,500 individual cells in their battery pack. So it's not just us trying to help stop thermal runaway. The battery manufacturers are really working hard with the automotive sector and all of them to say, hey, look, one cell we can live with and our battery management can handle it. But what happens? How do we stop cell to cell flame propagation? And so they're working on it in ESS, they're working on it in the built environment just as much as we are. But this picture is playing out all the time. And there probably isn't a day a fire marshal, fire inspector doesn't call me and say, hey, look, I need some help. What's the best practices for this? How do we start to handle this? And so there's a lot of creative work. California is setting the standard in many ways with their early adoption and bringing things forward as they adopt the 2021 IFC and IBC. Most states are not in this capacity. So what do we start to do as a local AHJ when we're starting to see this, especially with some of the things we're going up against where people don't necessarily want to follow best practices, or they say to your government officials, listen, your code doesn't cover this, therefore we're going to follow our best practice. The 2024 IFC, which you can get the language, it's all but just about printed and made to look pretty, but you can get the changes that show what the best practices are, both in sprinkler protection, ventilation, detection in these spaces. So as we start to go through, this is something that I think more and more all of us are going to have to start to deal with, because you drop your DeWalt drill or your Milwaukee drill and it has an issue, and you take it to a big box retailer and you're saying, hey, look, I want to get this recycled because it's still under warranty, it's not holding a charge anymore. What happens with that product? But more importantly, some of the things that as the fire service we're seeing is more responses to these types of events. Now, I think a lot of good partners are trying to get ahead of this, right? Think about your drawers at your home. Think about after you go to a conference, how many lithium-ion batteries do you have that are not in use? So that's where some of these manufacturing companies are starting to say, hey, look, we want your materials. But the key for the fire service is these are more and more on our roads. So if you look at this is a fire event out in Story County. This is a facility that's intaking batteries. And in each of these 55-gallon drums are batteries awaiting recycle. So they're just covered in a protective material for weather, but obviously they had a fire event. And there's no way to stop these cells once they're in thermal runaway. There's a lot of products, but all the manufacturers are going to say, hey, water's your answer to cool. And that's part of the change in paradigm. But this was in one of the containers here in Brighton going down the road. It was just a missed package. But this is the stuff affecting our firefighters. This was about a 6-hour event for us in which cells caught on fire in the back of a semi. And our responding firefighters reported that it gave a little bit of a blurb. Now, what I would say is the fire service is definitely coming together to try to equip our peers, our fire chiefs, both in prevention as well as in code enforcement response to say, hey, look, what is it that we need to do to make sure our company officers, our firefighters are properly repaired? Well, one of the first things is really this EV response. Now, we've had a lot of hybrids and other vehicles that have been on the road. But many of our communities, both for political reasons as well as maybe just the culture of our organization, have said, they're not coming in our backyard. I guarantee you there are battery powered vehicles operating in every single one of our communities in some way, shape, or form. And we are just on the early response. And just to show you the magnitude, when you totally think about it, look at that picture. Right now in the United States, we're probably creating 10 to 15 million cells a day. That's a day. I think by the end of this year, we're going to be closer to 30 million. And by the end of next year in the United States, we're going to be making 60 plus million cells a day. That's going to put more and more response on our firefighters. So what's the questions we're having? But more importantly, in our community, are we having the real approach? Because folks, time and time again, what's happening to our staff, we're getting these battery facilities with massive tax incentives and no consideration is being given to the fire department. So I would just argue that not only do we have to be prepared for what is going to be in this EV, and our manufacturers have done a wonderful job to help prepare us. They have lots of great response guides. We're seeing changes in requirements for future for SDS sheets. We're seeing changes coming future on mobility devices to be listed products. But one of the biggest things that I've discovered and fire chiefs have to do is get this sheet and go have a conversation both operationally and really with the EV and ESS. The new paradigm is we're going to have to let these things burn. And that puts increased demand. It's a longer duration incidents. It's more vehicles out of service. It's more water. And there's a lot of open questions we can't answer. And so with all of these products, whether it's a ESS with inside the home, whether it's an ESS or an EV or battery storage, they're facing us every day. And I joked early in the presentation that I said, this is the number one issue facing. Chief, can I do this? I don't want to allow this to happen. No Chevy Bolts in here. Folks, all of our parking decks across the United States within the next 10 years are going to be filled with EVs. I think that puts it on groups like the FSMC, the ICC, the NFPA to say, are our construction, are our codes robust for this massive change? And is there a hazard or is it safe? But more importantly, right, some of the things that I just challenge people with right away is that parking deck sprinkled, yes or no? Is and has that electrical equipment meet the current edition of the NEC? And is it properly safeguarded? Right? Some simple things that could probably happen here. What about some impact protection or at least some stand-up curbs so we're not running into probably an issue? When it comes to code development, holy cow, are we going to be busy? NFPA 13 is going through its second revision. There is a placeholder, but one of the things we have to remember is NFPA 13 right now is saying, hey, we don't cover lithium-ion batteries. There is some standards within FM Global. Yes, there is some smaller scale testing, but where the 2024 IFC says is you need to large scale fire test your storage arrangement and prove your sprinkler system design works. I would anticipate some of our partners in the sprinkler industry are going to come forward at some point in time with probably a specific application sprinkler that went through some testing to help us. But know that when you go to the current edition of NFPA 13, it says lithium-ion batteries are excluded. So we understand that our AHJ's hands are tied. So there's a second revision going on in which hopefully we can get something. If not, it'll be the next cycle. NFPA 855 has about, I don't know, plus 20 work groups in various capacities from new technology. And they are working on their next edition. So first revision comments or public, I'm sorry, I have to say this right, public inputs are due later this spring. We're anticipating, and I think maybe it's announced today, but at some point, the ICC is going to announce its code revision cycle for the 2027 documents. I would expect a lot of battery work to be completed for the 2027 codes, both in the IBC, the IRC, and the IFC. And I know that Robert Marshall and the FCAC have a work group working on this. And then likewise, NFPA 1 first revisions, and then whatever is in our second. So really the questions start to become, how do we balance all of these changes affecting us? And how do we collectively start to advocate? Because real money needs to be assigned to this outside of our typical grant structure and typical branches. But more importantly, we've got to come together. And what I mean by that is, if I could go ask the president for anything, I would say is we need a collective approach, 250 million over the next 3 years given to the fire service to advocate for things on best extinguishment techniques, what it should be our sprinkler system. And that's done with adequate testing, partnering with groups like the ICC and saying, hey, you got to evaluate building construction and are we doing things right? Is there a need for a change in the residential market with the devices being put in? Heck, one of the things we can't answer is there a water runoff issue? Is there a smoke issue? And what should our hazmat teams be monitoring? So we've got a lot of things here we can ask. What's the impact on our community on longer incidents? What's the financial impact? Because this revolution is not going to change. It's going to expand. We're going to see more hydrogen. We're going to see more alternatives to lithium-ion. It's just going to keep going. And we, as the fire community, have to put our head on a swivel and be really strong. And one of the things I would truly advocate for is those of you working for the fire service, get your CRR activities tuned up. Because if you haven't had a battery fire yet, they're coming. And number two, start tracking your data. Add a special study in your incident management software to say, hey, look, we have got to start tracking if a battery was involved, and ask that question, did it start it or was it involved? Because it's two drastic things. And that would really say is, hey, how do we stop that secondary event? So doing proper transportation of suspect batteries is becoming very important. Getting batteries to recycling. How about in our first in-house fire crew where we had a scooter involved in the fire? I don't care if it started it, it was just involved. Step one, get the product outside safely. Account for all the cells. Number two, figure out how you're going to get rid of the stored energy. Number three, get it packaged properly for disposal at a licensed repair facility. Collectively, go back home, figure that out, how you do it in your community, because we have to stop the secondary events. Too many times that scooter's ending up in a dumpster, it's ending up in our trash system, and it's creating a secondary issue. So, you know, I could talk all hours on this, and I tried to hammer this as fast as I can, but there's so much going on. And collectively, we've got a lot of things that we're working on very well together. We know we're going to keep pushing because some of these markets, when we wrote the 2024 IFC and IBC, we didn't anticipate this, and they're coming. And so how do we, knowing that there's going to just be this massive demand, knowing that we're behind. So my new phrase, I'm going to get some t-shirts. Codes are slow, technology's fast. And that's what we're up against. And we're up against real money, folks. This is not little money. There are billions of dollars in play. And so our communities are going through some very fast things. Pretty excited. A lot of people on this call are participating in the Firefighter Safety Stand Down. It's June 18th through 24, 5 days aimed at lithium-ion battery response. Thanks to Safety and Health Section, NVFC, NFPA. I know I'm going to miss somebody. You can see it all there. Go to safetystanddown.org. And I think most of you, I'm on your email. So if you got it, you can just reach out. If there's something I can do to help, please do. But, you know, lots going on in this environment. And so, yeah, there you go. Questions, comments, philosophical remarks. You didn't hear anything I said.
If anyone has a question for Chief O'Brien, oh yes, Kelly, just put your hand up in the chat and we'll get to you. Kelly?
Hey Chief, how you doing?
Hey, Kelly.
Hey, real quick, do you foresee, from a warehousing standpoint, the advocacy for potential MAQs for lithium battery storage in warehouses or distribution centers?
You know, that's a good question. Right now, the total amount of electrolyte and other stuff in most of our cells is pretty small. Some of them, depending on capacity, they get a little bit different. Right now, it's not the same as what we're used to in a traditional battery set where we were managing MAQs, just because that volume's not there. Do I see us probably having discussions down the road on how much completed cells should you have in a space? That's going to be a hard one for us, because I'm going to tell you right now, there's warehouses sitting at 100, 200, heck, 1 million square feet, and they are filled with cells in some form of the weight of the production stream. And they're in modules, they're cells waiting for testing, they're aging, low state of charge in most cases. But yeah, I could foresee us having more discussions on that, but initially, when we first started looking at it, the total volume is pretty small in some of the cells. It doesn't mean all the cells, but right now it's kind of not it's not covered. But I'm going to guess there's going to be more discussion on it down the road.
Thank you, Chief.
Andy, you have a question?
I do. Chief O'Brien, can you restate why the 30% is so important? And then is there any way that we can truly enforce that or verify that those levels are kept? Has that been discussed?
Yeah, good question. So in the there's a couple of percentages here that are important. So let me start with the ones that are weird. From a CRR standpoint, we need to push 80% or less on state of charge. And where that comes from, if you buy a new Chromebook, a new Dell, and you predominantly keep it plugged in, it only charges to 80%. That's from a longevity of the battery. So let's just take that out of the picture. A lot of our roadway standards are saying batteries have to be shipped at less than 60% state of charge. In the upcoming edition, in the 2024 changes, we specifically call out 30%. And that links back to some initial level testing that when at a 30% state of charge or less, it burnt more like a Group A plastic. Now, you saw in the video some of the projectiles that we're getting. One of the concerns when batteries are not in their final state, in their steel containers, in their modules, we could end up getting this projectile. And I think we're going to learn as more and more places start to burn this state of charge. Just know IFC 2024 says it exempts in the 24 edition a lot of things when you're below 30% state of charge. So detection, suppression, flame, and when I say detection, so if I have a storage occupancy with probably, let's say 70% state of charge, it's going to affect my sprinkler system density. It's going to affect detection through VESDA or thermal sensing. And then I'm going to have a couple other requirements specifically in ventilation. When I get under the 30%, most likely I'm still a sprinkler building, but I'm going to probably drop some other requirements. So this is a big question. If you get a battery facility of different nature, different types that comes across your desk, I don't care what they're doing. They're storing recycled battery. So manufacturing, Andy, one of the things I have found is they can answer this question. They know. And they have areas that they're cycling, and then they can bring it down. The ones that don't, you just have to make sure that the engineer and the design team are hitting they're designing for that higher energy potential, and higher energy potential is probably going to result in bigger fires.
Great, thank you very much. Randy Metz.
Thank you for the presentation, Chief O'Brien. One question that I did have, as we all know, we do regulate vehicles that are being displayed inside buildings, malls, and right now it's really specific to liquid fueled vehicles where we regulate the amount of gasoline in the tank. Do you anticipate seeing a change in the future where we add EV vehicles and add that 30% battery charge limitation to vehicles on display?
Yeah, so Randy, you bring up a great point, and I got to laugh because the Detroit Fire Marshal called me about a year and a half ago, and he says, "Hey, I got this little thing called the Detroit Auto Show coming in. What are we supposed to do with EVs?" And I said, we forgot to do that in our 2024 code changes. So what I foresee is a lot of discussion in this, because I think whatever we do for assembly display, we need to think about what's going to be happening in every single automotive dealer across the United States. And so right now, getting stored energy out of a charged vehicle is very difficult unless you start driving around. And somebody just put the FKX going to work on it. So what I do foresee is probably a lot of language on no active charging. And where this hit me is I was at a recent show and they were charging cars on the display floor because they were showing their charging equipment and they were running the vehicles inside. And so I think there's a lot of things that we're probably going to have to get with that industry to seek to understand. And then also understand there's a lot of limitations in those buildings that they don't have the big protection measures. And a 2.5 hour event inside of a assembly hall is a lot different than our traditional cars. So I see a lot of discussion. I think we're all trying to seek to understand what could be the best, but I got to think there's going to be something.
Great, thank you very much. Any other questions? Carl.
Hey, Chief, just as a quick reminder, we talked a little bit about the provisions that are in the I-codes right now, and you talked a little bit about the the provisions that are going to come out in the 24s. Would you remind folks maybe what they could potentially do based on some other best practices that you've seen throughout the country if they need these protections ahead of kind of their typical adoption timeframes?
Yeah, and thanks for that, because I think my speed got us. So remember that in the 2021 edition, well, both really in the 2018, 2021, we really start to make some robust revisions as it relates to energy storage systems. And it gets us into both NFPA 855 land, large UL 9540, UL 9540A for testing, so that's our built environment where we're using batteries as part of stored energy. There's no doubt that we keep expanding and learning. So all of us is, if I've adopted the IFC, if you're, a lot of the country's still on 15, 18, right? Chapter 1 allows you in many cases to take on new technical challenges, very specifically when another standard and when something else has taken it on and your code doesn't speak to it. And in so much of this, we've got to go back and say, hey, look, when we learn something can be a hazard, right? So we're learning more and more about the fire hazard. We're learning more and more about the need for ventilation because of that very flammable, toxic gas, the need to get that ventilated out of a space. And so what I would urge everybody is, if you've got a facility that's going to be in the battery recycling, battery storage, that you're in the IFC 2021, work through chapter 1 to get you to the technical and be open and honest with your community. Likewise, every single one of us has recycling facilities, and heck, maybe the FSMC can help me come up with a little cheat sheet that we give out to every fire inspector in the world to say, hey, look, here's the best practices for battery recycling in big box. And maybe we can work with them to say, hey, look, based on the 2024 code provisions, here you go, because that's going to be, that's the one that's playing out everywhere. And I think a lot of us probably walk by it. And I'm not saying we walk by it on purpose. There's just a lot to think about in this topic. And so great point, Carl, but your chapter 1, those of you who don't like admin, man, those sexy folks got it right. And they gave you the provision to get to this new code language.
And one other quick one too is just that whole idea of we do a lot of talking about passenger vehicles and residential storage and those kinds of things too. But what are you seeing coming down the pike in terms of the fire service problem as we might see it to do with commercial vehicles as well? I know that's an emerging topic.
Yeah. So just Google Rivian, right? So let's see what we're going to see. The United States Postal Service, I think, authorized 200,000 new EV vehicles. So you're going to see a replacement at your post office and commercial charging. Bus fleets are the magic one. There's some money there. It's a pretty easy turnover. And there's a lot that you can start to do. So adding the layers in both, you think of the repair garages that are going to be working on those facilities. You think of the large scale that's going to be moving around. One of the complications that I don't think we fully fathomed, but thanks to California and CARB, so if you don't know, right, this regulatory agencies putting out a lot of goals really based on EPA and other programs. And so if you think about our large cooler trucks that go down the road that deliver pizza, vegetables, and they have a generator, a diesel run generator with a small saddle tank, and it's specifically powered on that trailer. In the future, there's a desire for that not to be on a diesel motor. And so there's some goals here that are going to start to say, hey, look, we want to go with battery platforms. So your entire semi-trailer is going to be a battery platform. And that can lead to a couple things, but for the code geeks, since I identify as one, the problem here is that now becomes this mobile ESS. And we've started to address mobile ESS. Well, mobile ESS requires permits in every jurisdiction it runs. So you think of Domino's, I'll just pick on Domino's, they make a transition to be, right, they got the Tesla motor up on the front, they got the trailer powered by batteries, and they're bringing dough at low carbon footprint. Everywhere they stop is supposed to have a permit. And I don't think that was our intention, but there's a lot of merit in that because there's a lot of stored energy. So I think you're going to see a pretty big push. You're already seeing the semis rolling out. You're seeing competitors to Tesla. Rivian and Amazon have a huge partnership, although they cut back their number. You're seeing just a complete transformation, and I'll just challenge you with this. What is the fire service going to do for ambulance fleets? We're at an all-time weird time right now as it relates with ambulances. We can't get enough chassis to get current gas-powered ambulances, right? The shortage of chassis is creating an ambulance issue. Well, you're 18 months out if you go to spec and buy a new ambulance. That's going to put you in the time frame that they're not making gas diesel much longer. And so is your organization who uses ambulances ready for battery-powered ambulances? And we're not driving. This is a huge fire service ask, is we have got to get in the forefront and start partnering and have our people start dictating what we need vehicles to look like. But on the surface, it's a Rivian box van, and the fire service hates a Type 2 ambulance, right? So you want to, fire marshals, you want to really cheese off your fire chief and fire prevention folks once in a while. Oh, wait, I'm being recorded. Just go into your next staff meeting and go, Chief, what are you going to do about battery-powered ambulances? And we can't buy gas-powered chassis anymore. But I mean, right, it's a discussion we got to start driving. You folks in WUI, like I want the big three. I want them to get on an airplane and let's go meet California Fire Service and let's see how your base operations work. Let's see what the absence of power, right? But how are we going to start to charge all of the vehicles in the infrastructure? So, right, one of the answers to charging vehicles where there's no power is hydrogen fuel cell charging rapid chargers. You with me? Hydrogen fuel cells providing power to charge EVs. That's what they did in the Mojave Desert when Motor Trend did all their tests on the EVs in the desert. That's how they did it, right? So we're going to be setting hydrogen fuel cells at the base camp so we can start charging all the vehicles in WUI operations that have to move fire officers around, right? Our battalion chiefs managing multiple companies and divisions and trying to move around. How do we get those charged when PG&E turned off the power to the whole area? And so we have got to start driving some discussions because, quite honestly, we don't have the money, right? A singular fire department can't drive that. Cal Fire might be able to drive that conversation, but it's a lot more than using a battery saw to cut down a 100-foot pine tree. It's about how are we going to move our people in a very complex environment. So when I say I'd like to get GM and Ford out with us, I want them to see when our fire battalion chiefs are running a car through submerged waters to get to an incident, because that's what we have to do. And when a company says our vehicles aren't intended to be run in submerged water, what do? Half the people on this call have been in a fire SUV run through submerged water to get to an incident. And so we've got to start shaking the tree a little bit here and getting some support. Some of it's going to take money. When I say I need 250 million, it's a game changer when we have 50 million to start working with chassis providers to start talking ambulances. It's a game changer when we say, hey, look, GM, Ford, Tesla, Rivian, come talk to us because we need to figure out how to submerge these vehicles and run them down the road. So lots in play, lots of changes coming. Whatever we figure out today, it'll be different. But I think one of the cool things is we got a lot of manufacturers trying their best to stop our fires too, right? They're trying to design safety in. So we just got to keep working together and keep that moving.
Thank you. Another question, Matthew Mertens. Matthew, you have a question?
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me
Yes.
now? Okay,
Yes.
there we go. Thanks, Chief Brian. Great presentation. A couple questions that came up on this. Is there anything being done that maybe I'm not aware of in terms of the battery storage, recycling, and the transportation? How, as an inspector, or how, as we're going into these situations, are we supposed to know these batteries are at 30, 60, 90% charged when they're in bulk storage, when they're in racks and on pallets? I mean, let's face it, you know, everyone's everyone. They're gonna, if they're charged to 90, they're not gonna decharge them to put them in the pallets and to transport them.
Yeah, good question. So new product, I've had no problem getting that question answered. There's no doubt we have some new work when we do annuals to verify that. So, you know, Metro Detroit, hundreds of facilities here. when we start talking state of charge with the manufacturers and how they're receiving stuff, they can usually answer that. I really think the recycling world, we're going to be assuming 100% state of charge. So recycling and those products are, there is just no way that there's no way we're going to be able to do that. So I think what you're going to see in the recycling used market is the assumption it's 100% and meet the safety provisions for that. If not, you've got to have some pretty rigorous employee stuff that you're going to have to test through verification. And out of any of the recycling facilities, that's why you're seeing more outside storage for recycling. It's the volatility and the unknown of the product. It's not that, well, lithium ion always catches on fire. It's we're receiving product that was turned in. Well, we don't turn in batteries just because. It's usually because they don't hold a charge anymore. They're warped, there's damage. But so we have a lot of friends in this space, Department of Energy, other universities. A lot of people are studying best practices. There's a couple case studies in which fires happened in buildings and they started to overpack with various material types. And you all have probably heard of the various manufacturers. And the containers caught back on fire a couple weeks later. And they were stored in the material. Well, the problem is that stored energy. And so for me, the recycling push in proper, right, you look at all the cells that Redwood Materials is taking in, and they're learning more and more how to get them properly stored, how to discharge the energy and get them down the road safely. And so I think you're going to start to see these middle distributors, middle collectors that take product from a consumer distribution point, get it to a safe state of charge, overpack it, and ready for hauling. And that's going to be their business. But probably one of the things we all could do is us lead the charge, with our community in battery recycling programs in which our public can do something. You know, my girlfriend gave me a battery pack. She says, "Hey, this is swelling. What am I supposed to do with it?" And I'm like, "Get it out of the house is what we're gonna do." And I feel like I kind of know a couple things about battery. Do you know how hard it was for me to find a place to take that battery? It was very hard. And so what's that? I think you're going to see a whole microcosm in the next 6 months come out on this. Drop boxes and other things, but we've really got to lead the way in our community to start those open public collection sites.
The second part of my question was about the ventilation. So when we're dealing with the ventilation, and I've got a very large battery distributor in my area. We've had, high piled storage fires. We've had issues. Is there, in terms of ventilation, when you're running ESFR systems, the smoke and heat vents are contraindicated in a lot of cases. They're fighting against each other and trying to make this a safe environment. Is that something that you guys are looking at in the standards development as you guys are going through and evaluating some of the exceptions in the code based on that particular product?
Yeah, and I think the use of ESFR and battery storage is a concern and a big question. I think that has some open answers right now as well. There's a lot of conversation with us trying to express to our built environment, the landlords, business owners, to say, hey, look, the fire and building codes are minimum standards. And I just need you to see how much smoke and gas is created when we have an event. And it's not just toxic, I shouldn't say toxic, but it's not just hazardous. There's a flammability component to this. And when too much gas gets in the container, things can go really bad, right? Because let's just take it very simply. People want to store batteries in old Conex containers outside because it keeps it out of the weather. The biggest question we should always ask is there proper ventilation on that space? I agree with you in the built environment in a sense of we have the exemption for ESFR. There's lots of concerns and discrepancies. I would probably say there's going to be a lot of dialogue on this storage of topic because I don't know if we fully fathomed 25-foot high piled storage of batteries, battery packs waiting to go in vehicles. I just don't think we did. In publicly released data, isn't out yet. So the question is, how many battery packs is bad or good when they catch on fire, and what can our sprinkler systems control? And one of the simple, think of all the people that are on tanks. I just said, hey, these can be 2-hour events. What size does NFPA 13 require of us on tank size when we start to look at sprinkler protection? And there aren't many that are over, what, 2 hours? And if I stay in IFC world, that whole provision in the back in the appendix that we have on calculating our fire flow size, probably some discussions we've got to have in certain applications. Yep.
Great. Another question, Ken Brulette.
Hey, very proud that you got that last name right. That's great. Ken Brulette, Seattle Fire. Hey, Chief, you brought, I put some stuff in the chat, but you brought forward the 2024 IFC language, and one of them is that we lean on is for the fire code officials, that technical opinion or report. What I'm concerned about is I'm going to be asking for those, but do we really have the experts in the field to actually create them in a timely fashion for us to actually be able to issue permits with it? And is there a certain group that we can turn to that has looked or has created technical reports that we can, maybe go to when necessary?
Yeah, so there's more than 3, but there's 3 very popular fire protection engineering firms right now working across the United States. Most of them are focused in the ESS environment, in the large scale battery manufacturing, right? And part of it is, look at some of these new battery facilities. They're plus 3 million square feet. So they're issuing a lot of technical reports, from dust to storage to whatever. You are spot on that I keep trying to convince my 17-year-old daughter to get into fire protection engineering and come work in the battery field, because there's a huge shortage in this side. And what's happening, at least I can speak here in Metro Detroit, is I won't say a manufacturer's name, but there's a facility here locally, 70,000 square feet. They're storing brand new battery packs in cocoon containers to 15 feet in height. Less than 60% state of charge, but there's no fire test to prove what that sprinkler system should be. So the HJ asked for a technical report, and they arguably got back political pressure as well as, hey, we're X, you should trust us, we know what we're doing. They finally did issue a technical report, and its foundation was light at best. So what I would say is, as HJs, when we get that technical report, don't be afraid to ask hard questions. Just because we get the technical report, feel free to ask. And we're seeing it more and more across the United States right now on product that's energy storage systems coming into the US that has not been tested in accordance with UL 9540A. And then they're wanting to issue a technical opinion report in the field. And so HJs are being pressed more and more. So there's no doubt, I think you bring up a great point. That technical report and checking to make sure it's somebody we like, that's good, is very, very important. So, yeah.
Great questions. Anyone else? Thank you very much, Chief O'Brien, for enlightening us with a different perspective on ESS and lithium-ion batteries that really hits home for the majority of the country. If you didn't, for the group, if you didn't scan the QR code, there is a lot of information, a lot of documents in there that I think can be used by IAFC and so forth. So we'll try to see how we can get those back out to everybody. Hopefully you took a snapshot of the QR code. So Chief O'Brien, thank you very much once again. You're always welcome here at FSMC to attend or present. You always bring really great topics. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
A quick shameless plug for Chief O'Brien's session. He and Dr. Kerber and a few others are going to be presenting this topic at the upcoming Congressional Fire Services Institute dinner and symposium. That'll be on Monday, I believe, at 11 in the morning, just ahead of lunch. So if you're going to be there, great. If you're not, and you've got a fire chief or other senior officials coming from your organizations, prep them with this material and have them come prepared if they're coming to DC, and have them ready to ask some questions there too. So thanks again, Chief.
I'll start with your fire marshal is always right. I'll just start it with that. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye-bye. All right. Okay, we're gonna move on the agenda. Is there any additions or corrections to this agenda? Hearing none, move on to approval of the minutes, the February 23rd meeting. Looking for a motion to approve.
So moved. Kelly speaking.
Kelly, is there a second?
Second, this is Doug Nelson.
Thank you, Doug. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're down to the work group updates. Member engagement work group, Brian.
Yes. So just a quick update, since it's a great presentation by Chief O'Brien. Good to have him on today. Just a quick update. We had our last meeting February 21st last month, and just talked about some different potential topics for member engagement, especially for these meetings. One of those topics was energy storage systems and batteries. Some of the other topics that we'll be looking to in the future, I know in May for the FSMC meeting, looks like we have NASFM set up to come and give a brief presentation on their guideline and document for sprinklers and trade-offs with sprinklers, and some of that work that they've put into that. So that'll be coming hopefully at the May meeting. Still working on April's meeting. Our next membership engagement meeting is going to be next Tuesday, March the 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern. If anybody's interested in participating in that, happy to have you, so that we can continue to find topics like Chief O'Brien and some of the others to come on and give us some updates on what's going on out there for. But at this time, that's all I've got right now.
Great, thank you very much. Emerging issues and trends. Sean, you have an update for us?
Sorry, I'm on the road and trying to get the computer going here. So we met last week. We're going to be doing a presentation, Marshal Desrochers and I, to the Eastern States building officials in New Hampshire. We have a 2-day conference in April, and we're going to be covering a lot of the battery issues and the storage issues and many of the things we've been talking about. I know Kelly's been working a lot on the report and the presentation as well. But I think we're making some good progress in getting that presentation together.
Great, thank you very much. Great opportunity to talk about FSMC. So thank you and Michael for doing that. Public awareness, just one update, getting ready for the tweets that we need to prepare and send out on a daily basis for May's Building Safety Month. So there's some work going on there. I'm going to move on to training and education. Mark.
Good morning or afternoon to everybody, depending on where you're at. A few quick updates, and I want to bring up, I guess, a request for ideas. The main thing we're working on right now in the training and education group is trying to respond to a call for proposals of sorts from the ICC. They're really trying to make updates to their educational programs, whether it be through the annual business meeting or through their online platforms or other, other opportunities. So But they've sent out a kind of a call for proposals or a call for ideas, and we would sure like to give them some ideas for educational opportunities more directed towards the fire service. If you've kind of seen the list of available classes, it's very long on the building code side of things and very short on the fire code side of things. So our organization would like to try to help with that and put forth ideas that would benefit our industry and benefit the fire service as a whole. So I would just ask if anyone in this, whether you're on the membership committee or just joining us today, I would ask if you've got thoughts on that to please reach out to me and forward ideas. They're looking for things such as the presentations at the annual conference that'll be in St. Louis this fall. Kind of the 90-minute range is what they're looking for there. We've got Online Live, which is a regular series where they would be 60 to 90-minute classes that would be given online. And there's also the online self-paced platform where there's just courses available anytime you want to take them. And so we've got opportunities to provide ideas in all of those arenas. And I would welcome any thoughts you have. Chief O'Brien's already provided several energy storage and battery courses for our group and kind of on our behalf, and that's been very appreciated. We've done some talks on emerging trends, distilleries, things like that. So I just hope that if you've got thoughts about what you'd like to see the ICC offer for the fire service, please reach out. So, but sorry to ramble on. I think I'll just mention lastly, our next meeting is on April the 3rd. We meet on the first Monday of each month at 2 p.m. Central. So be glad to have anybody that wants to join in and listen and contribute. And I think that's all I've got, Chief.
Great. Just a question, Mark, can you give some guidance to the group to when you say, give me some ideas or give us some ideas for presentations? What does that entail? Is it just a topic? Would you like to have a topic and a presenter? Can you give a little guidance as to what that means to maybe help people think about how they can contribute?
Yeah, I think it could be all of the above, Chief. If it's something that, say you've kind of put together a class locally that you think would be good on a larger platform, that's definitely something that would be beneficial. We obviously just have to start with the topics, but if it's not been developed or doesn't have an instructor, we're obviously going to have to come up with who's going to do that. So, but I think we've got a lot of great folks with good experience that can help with that. So I'd say from any end of that realm, if you've just got an idea of something that's really impacted you locally and you think would be good for us to talk about more on a national or an international level, let's bring it up and we can think about those next steps. But at the opposite end, if we have a packaged course pretty well ready, we can absolutely move that forward as well. So
okay, thank you.
Does that help? That answer your question?
No, it does. It does. So hopefully that kind of spurs people's minds to have some ideas. So thank you. All right, moving on to reports from officers and liaisons. We'll start with our governing committee board liaison, Director Metz.
Good morning, Fire Service Membership Council. Thank you for the opportunity. Great presentation from Michael Bryan. I think you guys are really setting the standard as far as membership councils go on bringing in speakers that are relevant in addressing current events. So outstanding job. A couple items that I would like to see bring some attention to. We do have a call for committees out currently right now. They are 3 committees that on the surface may not seem like they're huge in the fire service, but I think if you look deeper, it is 3 committees that the fire service should definitely be involved in. The first of which being foam plastic insulation. Obviously a concern of ours anytime we're dealing with insulation. as far as the burning characteristics of that insulation, what it does as far as toxicity for smoke, things of that nature. So the second one being 3D construction, definitely something that I think the fire service should be involved in, and would love to see at least an individual putting their name in for that one. And the final one is the performance code, probably one of our least known and used codes, but it's going through a revamp right now, and fire service would be an outstanding addition to that particular committee as we look to further develop our performance code and make it more relevant. There are quite a few grant opportunities that are out there right now. Some of them are non-traditional fire service type grants. We're all aware of things like AFG grants and fire prevention grants that come from the federal government, but there are a few other grant opportunities that are out there. If you're interested in exploring those, I'm sure that Carl can push those out your way. ICC is just trying to create a better awareness of grant opportunities that are out there. We're looking forward to seeing you all at the Spring Interchange in Tampa. So we will be having our in-person Fire Service Membership Council meeting there, followed by a 3-day education session that ICC is titling our Spring Interchange. Since we don't have any code hearings this year, there will be at least 1 or 2 fire-specific courses there, and that's one thing that we're always looking to try to increase is the number of fire training opportunities at our annual conferences and our educational forums that we put together. So great work on Mark Wassom's part to continue to push that out. Let's see here. One item on acquisitions, just so you can understand the business of ICC a little bit. We did complete, since our last meeting, the acquisition of American Legal Publishing. This falls into our area of what we call general code, which is our codifying side of International Code Council. Acquisition of this company actually makes ICC the largest codifier in the nation. So as we look to diversify the business holdings of ICC so that we aren't having all of our eggs in the basket of selling code, this has been one of our goals over the last few years, is to look for other opportunities to subsidize the most important thing that we do, which is generate the best code in the nation. So finally, the ad hoc building safety and security committee that was formed by the board probably about 3, maybe 4 years ago. I sat on that representing FSMC. We finally have released our report. It is originally was looking like a white paper. It is now out in a specific report format that is available on the website. It does cover all different types of buildings and security related issues. Started off as something that was addressing code safety and active shooter type situations for schools, and it expanded into basically any and all building safety and security related issues. So I encourage you all to take a look at that, see if there's anything that piques your interest in there, something that you can use as you work through this process in your home agencies. But it probably had about 2 years worth of time and effort from the members of the ad hoc committee that Director Angie Weesey led. And we're happy to see that's finally able to be put in your hands for consumption and distribution. Other than that, I don't have anything else to report on behalf of the board. I don't know if I have any other board members on the call right now that would like to add anything. So I'll give it back to Christine and Carl.
Thank you, Randy. Can you just reiterate again the 3 codes, committees that you are recommending our involvement? I have foam, plastic, and performance code. What was the construction committee?
3D construction.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any questions for Director Metz? All right, and I also don't see any other directors on. Is that correct, Carl?
I have not seen any other directors on. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge past President Dwayne Garris is on though, but I don't see any other current board members.
Okay, welcome, Dwayne. All right, so report from the chair. I only have just one. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody at the Tampa in-person meeting. This is a great opportunity for us to be able to do a bit more than what we can do virtually. We do have 4 hours for this meeting, so that is a great extension from what we've had in the past. So we're currently developing the agenda for that meeting. So if you feel that there's something that would be of benefit to have a group discussion, please let Carl and I know, and we'll see if we can get it on the agenda. So looking forward to seeing you all there. And I think Carl has a little bit more information that I'll defer to when he gives his report. And it's probably now, because I think the report from the vice chair, I think Tim had to leave. I don't think he is on currently. So staff liaison report, Carl.
Got it. Thank you. I just wanted to say it's great to have a lot of different folks, including Chief Metz and having Beth Tubbs on the call, because much of what I was going to speak with you about has already been covered by them today, and I will just merely reiterate at the summary level of some of those points. So great exchange of information. So first and foremost, I just wanted to let the group know I had the opportunity to represent the ICC last week, along with our National Fire Service partners, led through the Congressional Fire Services Institute and supported by primarily the National Fire Sprinkler Association, to go down to the Housing and Urban Development offices, so HUD. And we met with Julia Gordon, the Assistant Secretary for Housing and Federal, she's also the Federal Housing Coordinator for HUD as well. And the substance of our meeting was really focused on having HUD step up to take action on incorporating the provisions of the existing International Residential Code in its most current form, or the IRC, into housing requirements for the FHA covered mortgages. So we are pretty excited that there's still an audience to have this happen. It's a real opportunity administratively for HUD to kind of step up and sign on to this. The case for residential sprinklers, among other things within the IRC, is very strong, and it was really great to be there representing ICC as part of our National Fire Service partnership under CFSI. So that was a really great meeting. We've got some opportunity for follow up on that, and I know the U.S. Fire Administrator, Dr. Lori Moore Merrill, is going to follow up with a push from her end to hopefully make that happen. So more news hopefully will be on the way in the next few months on that. Separately, I'll be briefing the National Association of State Fire Marshals at their meeting that'll be held at the National Fire Academy the week of March 27th. So I'll be providing some updates on what's happening here at ICC, and also specifically on areas of collaboration between the ICC, the United States Fire Administration, and our other federal partners, and talking to the fire marshals about what's going on in that space. So that's another one of those really great opportunities that we have with the NASFM folks to be together and work on that partnership, similarly to the one that we have with the International Association of Fire Chiefs as well. You heard a little bit from Chief Metz about changes in the code development process and coming into using one combined online governmental consensus vote. There are some additional details in the link that I put in the chat in the ICC Government Relations Monthly Update. I also would offer up, and I think I could probably speak for Beth Tubbs if we can get our schedules aligned here too, to come on and perhaps jointly present the changes to the code development process. I know I've got a really good presentation that Susan Dowdy and I put together that we presented out at the California Fire Prevention Institute, where I was a few weeks back with her. Burr and Chief Metz and others, Robert Marshall and the California contingent, that I think could certainly be shaped for this and apply for this group as well. So Chief Reed, I just put that out for your consideration and potentially as an additional presentation that we could do here in the next month or two that I think would be a benefit to the whole group. Again, just re-stressing the deadline for the ICC Performance Code Consensus Committee is April 3rd. I saw that Beth leaned in and put a link to that, the councils and committees webpage. That's where you can find the application. So that's in the chat. And then last but not least here, in terms of the administrative updates, is the registration for the ICC Spring Interchange is open in Tampa, Florida. I'm going to go ahead and just cut and paste the website for that into the chat right now. And what I'd like to do is also let the folks from the governing committee know that I'll be reaching out separately to take a head count. We might be able to do a little less formal of a one today during our open time, but I'll reach out and do a confirmed in writing head count and see who's able to attend in person for that. So that's coming up April 29th through May the 3rd in Tampa, and our meeting is on the Sunday of those dates at 8 o'clock in the morning, as Chief Reed said. So we hope to see all of you there, and many of you may want to partake. I saw some questions in here about CEUs and education as well. So that is a great opportunity to come down and kind of fill up your CEU needs and join us down in Tampa if you have the opportunity to do that. The big one for us, of course, is going to be Building Safety Month. So that, of course, takes place during the entire month of May. It's a month-long campaign. This year, the theme is It Starts With You. The weekly themes, week 1, building safety starts at home. Week 2 is building safety professionals and you. Week 3 is something that I'm working on very closely with our marketing and communications team, and that is prepare your community, where we'll be talking a lot about all hazards, disasters, and disaster mitigation. So I'll have a heavy fingerprint on that, and look forward to sharing all things hazard in there, including fire, which I know is important. So it won't just be natural hazards that we see in the traditional sense of the flood and the earthquake and hurricane and the rest of those, but we will make sure that there's a good section in fire in there this year as part of revamping our efforts on the website. And then the week 4 is advocate for your community, and we have kind of a bonus week this year in May. So we have a week 5, and that one is themed as solving challenges together. So I will again also put the link to Building Safety Month here in the chat for you all, if I can manage to do that on the fly here. And last but not least, the ICC Government Relations Office in Washington, D.C. has a new home. After having been with the National Realtors Association in their building, taking the entire 6th floor, we are pretty excited to be moving to a new space. We downsized a little bit just in terms of numbers of staff that are in the office. So we've got a great brand new space that's now at what's called Capitol Crossing Office Complex. So it's only 2 blocks from our other office. It's now at 200 Massachusetts Avenue Northwest, Suite 250 in Washington, D.C. And that's in my email signature. So all of you, for the most part, that are on this call have that new updated address from me in your email as of yesterday. So we're looking forward to welcoming people to that new office, and we'll be doing a soft opening of that office in a celebration of Building Safety Month on May the 24th, I believe. So that is my update, and I'll take any questions or give it back to you, Chief Reed. Thanks so much for the time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carl. Any questions for Carl? I'm not seeing anything. All right, we're going to move on to other membership council officers and liaisons. Building Membership Council, Tom Allen. Hi, Tom.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Chief. First, I want to say for those that are coming, welcome to Florida. Tampa, it'll be mid to high 80s, maybe to 90. So you can come down and thaw if you want to. The last BMC meeting was yesterday. We had a very good presentation on the Building Code Action Committee update, as well as the new code change process. Carl, you might want to check on getting some slides for that. Young lady that gave that presentation had some great slides that really laid out the process well. When we redid our charter last year, we opened a new position for a secretary position on our BMC, and we're looking in Tampa to possibly fill that position so that we'll actually have our own recording secretary. I don't know who's more excited, us or Bill Nash, so he won't have to continue to keep track of us. Of course, Building Safety Month is the biggest thing we're talking about these days. Also, one of our committees, the Raise the Profile Committee, has actually got a website out now, raisetheprofile.com, and building departments can go there and fill out a form, and it will actually send a message from that committee, a proclamation to your local jurisdiction about your building department. So it's kind of and again, we're trying to raise the profile as much as we can. The best practices is actually working on all the vision and mission statements for the committee, as well as if you haven't seen it, there is a brand new best practices manual on the ICC website, which is put together mostly by major jurisdictions, but with some help from the Building Membership Council. And it just was put up in the last couple of weeks. So it's a second edition. Got a lot of great information from a lot of the large jurisdictions in the country that how to do different things. And the next meeting will be in Tampa, and I look forward to seeing full-size people there. So with that, I conclude my report.
Great, thank you so much. And looking forward to seeing you in the Building Membership Council and all the other membership councils in Tampa as well. Rock from Global Membership Council. Rock, are you still on?
Yes, thanks, Chief. Good afternoon, everybody. Our next meeting is actually a month away, so I don't have any updates. Chief Rick, may I take this opportunity to share some industry news?
Sorry, we had some people bleeding over. Can you repeat that, Rock?
Yeah, I have some industry news I'd like to share, if that's okay.
Sure.
All right. So on the clean agent front, FM 200, since last year, it has been phasing down. It's a greenhouse gas. So the industry basically increased the price so that, it's no longer a viable selection. So now, I guess the most popular product, it's called Novec 1230. 3M, as one of major manufacturers, just announced that they're going to discontinue production of Novec 1230. Obviously, there are some other manufacturers still making them. So that is right now like the industry like go-to product. I was made aware there's a water mist product. It's supposed to be alternative as a residential sprinkler. It's called Plumis, Plumis. It's a technology originated from UK. Now they're setting up shops in the US, actually made it all the way out to the East Coast. It's basically a high pressure pump, pressure up to 1,000 PSI. And then the pump supplies water from domestic source, and then connects to a via pressure hose made of rubber, looks like to me, connects to a water nozzle. The nozzle is like a 4x4 plate flush mounted, and the mounting head, it's around 4 feet, and it's got an infrared sensor so that it also connects to a heat detector. If it detects a fire, the nozzle will spray water mist. It's actually a pretty neat technology. Obviously, there's no listing for that. So it's just a new product. There's some issues with that, just from my research. But again, it's a new technology, so I just want everybody to be aware. There's also two products that's coming out. It's at the final stage. It's being tested, approved. One is the lithium-ion battery detection and suppression. And the second one, it's a self-contained fire watch unit. It has cameras, cell phone connections, notification devices, all in one package. So hopefully that's going to be exciting product. And once it's being approved, I have more information. I'll be more than happy to share with everybody. That's all I have reporting.
Great. Thank you very much. Looking at the attendees, I don't believe I see any liaisons or chair, vice chairs of any other membership council, but if I'm missing somebody, if you'd like to raise your hand and give a report, please do. Okay, seeing none. Getting to the end, we don't have any ongoing or new business. So our next meeting is going to be in person on April 30th, 8 a.m. Eastern time in Tampa. And I'll move on to go to the order and questions or comments from the audience. So this is your opportunity to ask any questions, share any information, make any comments that you would like. All I ask is that you raise your hand raise your hand in the room, and I will call on you for any comments or questions. Randy Metz.
Thank you, Chief Reed. I did put a link in the chat, but I did want to send out a congratulations to Chief Reed directly. She was selected last week and honored by the California Building Officials Association as their Fire Service Person of the Year award. This is a huge honor that they present to a California Fire Service individual annually, and a large part of that was due to her involvement nationally and her leadership here at FSMC as well as in the state of California. So I just wanted to say thank you and congratulations, Christine. It was a real treat to be able to see you receive that award and get this type of recognition from our building officials here in the state of California.
Great, thank you very much. That was a very great honor, so I appreciate that. Any other comments, questions? All right. It looks like that's it. We've reached the end of the agenda, so I will look for a motion to adjourn. Does everybody want to stick around?
Motion to adjourn. This is Doug Nelson.
Second by Wassom.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thanks, everybody. GC members, we'll see you in Tampa. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we'll see you at the next monthly meeting. Take care. Have a good day.
Bye.